What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today we're moving on to the AFC West. Hard to think we're 2/8 or 1/4 of the way through our 2021 season preview series, and today we start the AFC West talking about the Denver Broncos. Excited to talk about what could be a really special team. You'll see some asterisks on your screen. We'll talk about that here in one moment. But first, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel and want more sports content like this, please consider subscribing. And give me all your Denver Broncos takes down below. What's their win range, X factors, games to watch? I'd love to have your thoughts, and I respond to every comment. So let's talk about the Broncos. So let's talk about the Broncos at that point. Win range 5 to 9 wins, and then asterisk denotes that they don't get Aaron Rodgers. If they get Aaron Rodgers in a trade, which I don't know, that's kind of gone dry. I'm starting to become less and less convinced that that's going to happen. And if they don't have Rodgers, 5 to 9 wins sounds about right. If they do have Rodgers, put them in that 11 to 13 win window to me. They become one of the most complete teams in the NFL. But since they don't have them on the roster, we're going to talk about them as if they're starting Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, which that in itself is interesting. We'll talk about that when we get to the X factor. So 5 to 9 wins with one of those two. I haven't projected at 6 wins, but I was going back and looking at their schedule, and they have a pretty favorable start to the year. But they are on the road against the Giants and the Jags, so despite that being matchups I think they could win, being on the road is obviously tough. And then they're back home against the Jets, which we'll talk about later on. So I don't know, the beginning and then there's a middle stretch of the season where really the Broncos could go on a nice win streak, and maybe they do get up to 7, 8 wins, whoever's under center. So maybe 6 is a little low, but I'd love to have your thoughts. Tell me how many wins you think the Broncos come away with this season. Realistic goal, figure out the QB position. So this is unrelated to wins and their season production basically, but they have got to find out if in year 3 is this Drew Lock's team, right? Like same thing we're talking about with the Giants and Daniel Jones, Tua in year 2 in Miami. They have got to put a plan in place to see if Lock is the guy, and if he's not, they're going to turn it over to Teddy Bridgewater, which, no disrespect to Teddy Bridgewater, but he's not a franchise guy. I mean, look at Carolina. They were, okay with him, I guess. I mean, the team overall wasn't good, and he wasn't fantastic. Better the first half of the year than the second half, but you've heard me say that 1,000 times. Overall, though, if he is your starter, that is not a long-term answer. Therefore, you're going to have to try to move up in the draft. You're going to have to try to make a big move in free agency, or you're going to have to try to make a trade for Aaron Rodgers next year. So they have got to put a plan in place to figure out who is going to be our franchise guy, which is something that's kind of evaded John Elway, which I'm glad that he has, really stepped up in the organization, but really turned over the GM duties to George Batten, who's gotten off to a strong start. Now he's got to find the QB of this team, because there's a lot of talent on this roster, and they cannot waste the primes of so many of these guys. They're probably not going to even have Von Miller next year. I wouldn't suspect him coming back after this season, and if he's gone, your defense is taking a step back. But overall, there's just too much talent on this team to be wasted with, middling QB play. Reach goal? Make the playoffs. And again, you see that asterisk. I mean, maybe Drew Lock takes that third-year leap that we saw from Josh Allen last year. Where I hesitate to say he will is because Allen from year 1 to 2 got better, and then from 2 to 3 he got exponentially better. We haven't seen that growth from 1 to 2 yet for Lock, but also he did get hurt last year in the game against the Steelers. I think that was week 2 or 3. And after that, he just didn't really look the same. So maybe that injury on his throwing shoulder played a bigger factor than we're giving him credit or accounting for. And maybe here in year 3, with the pieces around him, he has a ton of weapons. The offense clicks for him, and everything falls into place. And if he takes a half the size of a leap that Josh Allen made last year, and he's just a plus level quarterback, he didn't even have to be an MVP type of dude. If he can just be a plus level QB, this is a team that can win double digits, and they can make the playoffs via the wild card. So a lot of asterisks there. Obviously, asterisks on your screen, but literally leaning on an asterisk. You're relying on an if statement. But also, maybe Teddy Bridgewater, throws for more than 14 touchdowns, right? And he's a good game manager. He has a high floor. So maybe with so much talent around him, kind of similar to what we had in Carolina, but I think this team has an even better pass-catching core. With those weapons around him, maybe he throws for more touchdowns. He continues to be a game manager. They have a better running game, considering Carolina had Christian McCaffrey in and out. Mike Davis is, solid, but nothing like Melvin Gordon and what I think Javonte Williams is going to be. And maybe that's enough to carry Teddy Bridgewater into the wild card spot. We'll have to see, though. Let's talk about some of these X factors. Obviously, Drew Lock is the guy to talk about with this team. Does he take that leap forward? Like I said, if he takes half the size of a jump that Josh Allen made last year, he's a average to above average QB, and you can work with that given he is making not a lot of money on that rookie deal, and maybe he takes another step forward in year 4, and maybe that paints a picture that Denver can win with a game manager plus level QB. But if he doesn't work out, then you turn it over to Teddy Bridgewater, which I think the dichotomy between the two is Bridgewater has that higher floor, but Locke definitely has the higher ceiling, given he has a stronger arm. He has I don't want to say he's more mobile, but he's just younger. He doesn't have a whole lot of snaps or games played under his belt compared to that of Teddy Bridgewater, who's in his upper 20s. You kind of know who Teddy Bridgewater is, and Locke obviously, fell to the second round due to some concerns coming out of Missouri, and overall the concerns have been more prevalent than the flashes of excellence that we saw at the college level. But we've seen crazier things happen, and he does have a strong arm, and he wants to take the shots down the field. He kind of has that Jameis mentality where he wants to push it down the field. He wants to get the ball into the hands of his playmakers, and having Courtland Sutton back will help him with those 50-50 opportunities. And Jerry Jeudy did have a lot of drops last year, but I think that kind of coincides with bad QB play. But maybe Locke finds more accuracy, and the drops fall for Jeudy, and KJ Hamler becomes a bigger part of the offense. Like, there's a lot to like for this Denver team, but it all starts and ends with Drew Lock. And is he the guy? If not, Teddy Bridgewater is going to be okay. He's going to be fine, but it's going to signal that this team needs to find their franchise guy, because it ain't Drew Lock. And then the other X factors, it's tough. This is as good a roster as there is in the NFL. I mean, I thought about maybe putting Ronald Darby on here because he's making 3 years, $30 million, but they also have Kendall Fuller, Patrick Surtain, Michael Ojemudia, Bryce Callahan. So, how are you using Darby? Is he maybe your replacement long-term to Kareem Jackson? I don't know. They're not even paying Kareem Jackson $10 million a year. I don't know if Darby can really play that in-box safety role that Jackson does. But that aside, Bobby Bassey is replacing Juwan James, who went down with the ACL tear early on in this offseason. So obviously, big loss there for Denver. Juwan James has been a little up and down even when he's on the field. But, what are you getting out of Bobby Bassey? Probably, just a guy, really, just a starting level tackle, which if he plays well, that kind of puts together a really solid offensive line. Also considered putting Lloyd Cushingberry III on here, but I think he gets better here in year two. A lot of Broncos fans are calling for, a change of the center position, but, Cushingberry was the center last year, mid-round pick. Let's give him another year. Let's see what he does. Now, if he's, not good this year, then yeah, maybe look for an upgrade at that spot. But I think Cushingberry takes a step forward. So therefore, if Massey is, solid, a quality starter, that's as good a balanced offensive line as there is in the NFL. So obviously Massey becomes an X factor to do that. And then Draymond Jones. There's not a whole lot of holes in this defense. Maybe you could point to Alexander Johnson or AJ Johnson, whichever one he's going by now, and Josie Jewell. But we kind of know who those guys are. And we know they're not spectacular, but the two of them together play pretty well. It's a good tandem. Jewell's probably a little bit more athletic, better in coverage, while AJ Johnson knows how to lay the boom. That dude's a thumper. So those two together in a 3-4 defense, I think, are fine. And then Tremont Jones is kind of an unknown commodity. I thought he was a really solid selection for Denver coming out of Ohio State, and he does have the benefit of having Von Miller, Bradley Chubb playing together for the first time since 2018 on the outside. He has Shelby Harris next to him, so pieces are lining up for Draymond Jones to be a quality level nose tackle. So if he stops the run minimum, he's doing his job. But I think there is some pass rush potential there, and if he has a good season rushing the passer, it's going to help Shelby Harris, it's going to help Von Miller, it's going to help Bradley Chubb, it's going to help Baron Browning, who I think is going to mix in as an edge rusher for this team. Malik Reed, same deal. So Draymond Jones, not necessarily the biggest act factor compared to other teams and who they're relying on, but if Jones plays well, it takes this defense that's probably top end elite in most people's eyes anyways, but puts them into the stratosphere of, Washington football team and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is maybe one of the top two in the NFL. So, because of that, Jones is an X factor of sorts. Games to watch, and then we'll round this video out. Week 3 against the New York Jets. Again, this kind of concludes a stretch of games where, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if the Broncos are 3-0 to start. That sounds crazy, but on the road against the Giants, who are really kind of a similar team. Maybe I should have put that Week 1 game against the Giants now that I'm thinking about it, because those two teams have so much talent, but they're both relying on a third-year QB to take a leap forward. Which one will do it? Will either one of them get that? So, in retrospect, maybe I should have put the Giants game, but on the road against the G-Men, then they're on the road against Jacksonville, which is also going to be a fun game. But if they come away 2-0 on the road, which is not easy to do, obviously, but then they return home against the Jets, that's why I put the Jets game on here. It's because a couple of winnable road games, and then you come back home in a game I definitely think you should win. Who knows? The Broncos could be 3-0 to start the year with, Locke or Bridgewater in their center, and what kind of a storyline would that be? Read the banner on the ESPN ticker. I mean, that would be something. That would capture a lot of eyes. And then you get into a stretch middle of the season, week 7, 8, and 9. They are all against NFC East opponents. I picked week 7 against Washington football team because I felt like it was the one that is probably closest to 50-50. They are at home, which definitely bodes well for Denver. Also, that game has 2 of the best pass rushes in the NFL. I mean, pass rushing core, that might be 1 and 2, right? Like that front 4 for Washington, Allen, Payne, Sweat, and Chase Young, and Matt Ioannidis rotating in, filthy. And then for Denver, you have Shelby Harris. We talked about Draymond Jones, Miller, Chubb, Reed, Browning. I mean, that is a nasty group of pass rushers. I mean, that's fantastic. So that's going to be a really fun game, but not if you're a QB. If you're Fitzpatrick, Locke, Bridgewater, whoever it is, that's not a game you're looking forward to, but I am. And then after that, they're on the road against Dallas. That's probably a bit of a reach for them to pull that upset, but, defense travels. Anything could happen. And then week 9, they're back home against Philly, and I would hope they beat the Eagles. I'm just not high on the Eagles this year. And then fast forward to week 15. Again, I love having an end-of-the-season game on these games to watch. How much progress did you make this year? From the beginning of the season to the end, did you start out 3-0 and then finish the year 6-11? Because that would, tell the story of where this team's momentum took them. So, additionally, this is a fun matchup in the sense that Cincinnati's offense is going to be really good. They're going to put up points. So how does that match up against a really quality Denver defense, one of the best in the NFL? And you're at home, so it's another one of those games you could point to and say Denver should be favored in this game. I feel like the Broncos can win this game, at least as we stand right now. Once we get to, week 12, we might have an idea of this team's really bad because of the QB play, or Joe Burrow's hurt, no doubt, the Broncos should win. So as it stands right now, it's maybe 50-50-ish, but I would take the Broncos at home. Really like that pass rush, and it should slow down that Cincy offense that's going to put up a lot of points. But nonetheless, this is a game to try to be the barometer. How much better did you get over the year, and did you find an answer at QB? This is going to be one of the games that you find out. Additionally, week 16 and 17 are division games, and I don't put division games in our games to watch because if the Broncos are playing the Chiefs, you're a Broncos fan, you're obviously paying close attention to that game. You're going to be watching all these games for a Broncos fan, but division games always matter, obviously, so I don't put them in the games to watch. So Cincinnati Bengals, the last non-division game, and I feel like it's definitely a good one to keep your eyes on. But that's going to do it for my 2021 season preview for the Denver Broncos. Give me your Broncos takes down in the comments section. What's their win range? Do you think they get Aaron Rodgers? That's a fun discussion to have. If they do, give me some X factors. And if they do you think they're better than the Chiefs? Again, I'd love to have that talk with you down in the comment section. I respond to every comment. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel and want more sports content like this, please consider subscribing. That's all I got for this one. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.